When people talk about the best human duelist in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, Jaden naturally takes the title belt, and the discourse after that usually focuses on the likes of Aster, Zane, and the Chazz. Now me personally, I think 3 of the 4 student transfer duelists introduced in Season 3 all have a case for the second best human right behind Jaden, and in today's video, I want to make that case for a one, Mr. Jesse Anderson. Now to be clear, I don't think people hate on Jesse's dueling prowess. This isn't as polarizing a debate as previous installments of this series because Jesse is, by most accounts, considered a top 10 duelist in GX, and in the poll I ran on my channel, the majority of you consider him top 5. So well done. But that won't stop me from going through on this love letter because I simply think Jesse doesn't get talked about enough, and in this video, I'll explain why he should be. The biggest thing working against Jesse is that his most well-known duels are all fought through Yubel controlling his body, those being against Zane, Adrian, and Jaden. For dub watchers, Jesse, when in control of his body, only duels 6 times, most of which are against forgettable opponents or unfinished. The undubbed Season 4 gives him 2 more duels, but even one of those is unfinished. His most notable duels are alongside Jaden in the 2-on-1 versus Yubel as Marcel, and the triangle duel against Fujiwara in Season 4, so it's hard for him to fully shine when he isn't flying solo and can't get a clean win. And the only remaining duel is his very first one, a loss to Jaden where he has a glaring misplay. More on that later in this video. The other problem with Jesse is that he's introduced more than halfway through the show and tries to take on a role already taken by Cyrus, that being MC's best friend. It's not a coincidence that the ones usually lauded as the best human duelists behind Jaden were introduced in the first third of the series because they have more screen time, and compounding that is the fact that most of Jesse's vital screen time is taken by Yubel controlling him. With few moments to work with, it's understandable why folks aren't as bullish on Jesse as I am. In fact, it feels like it'd be easier to argue against Jesse. So what is his case? Let's go down the list. Jesse, when in control of his body, is 3, 2, and 1 with 2 DNFs. That one draw is the duel he has alongside Jaden versus Yubel as Marcel, though since the team wins, you could count it as a win, putting him at 4, 2, 1, and 2. That's not too shabby of a record, but what's odd about it is that his losses, draws, and DNFs all say a lot more about him than his wins, which, again, come against what I call forgettable opponents. Let's start with his first loss. This is in his very first on-screen duel, the one at Duel Academy against Jaden. It's also the one with that glaring misplay where had he waited to attack directly with Amethyst Cat, he could have dealt the full 1200 instead of the 600 he dealt by using its effect to attack directly, and that difference would have won him the game. Now, in my opinion, misplays like this are a bigger indicator of an oversight by the writing team, but in-universe, this exact play seems to be the topic of discussion when Jaden asks Jesse why he didn't just do that, to which Jesse says he was going for something else. Honestly, just sounds like he was prolonging the duel for the heck of it, which seems very in character for him. He really didn't care about winning or losing at this point, saying so himself at an earlier point in the duel that he prefers to see his opponent's potential. But the bigger takeaway from this duel is that Jesse is not dueling at full power, facing off before Rainbow Dragon has been created by Pegasus. That is the ace of his deck. And given how tight the duel was and how he teased Rainbow Dragon at the end, it's fair to think that if he had it, he could have won the duel. His next duel is the win over Trapper, who is essentially running a deck that hard counters the Crystal Beast by placing them in his own spell trap zones. And yet, Jesse makes the comeback and has game on his 5th turn, but Trapper forces him to continue the duel by threatening to tear up Jerry Beans Man. Not Jerry Beans Man! For context, this is a card Trapper stole from a kid that Jesse is trying to get back. Fortunately, during Jesse's next turn, Jaden swoops in and rescues Jerry Beans Man, and Jesse goes into a Gem Burst combo for the win. Jesse's next 2 duels are wins against the Rock Spirit and Emotionless Mask. Not much to say here, Jesse makes quick work of both of them. His next duel after that is the DNF versus Zane, a duel that ends when Cyber End and a juiced up Amber Mammoth double KO and the connection between dimensions is severed. While Zane still has 2 big bodies on board, he literally has nothing else and has gone through most of his best cards already. On the flip side, Jesse has 4 Crystal Beasts as monsters, the Mammoth as a spell, 1 mystery card in hand, plus 1 card he's about to draw, giving him plenty of ammo to work with. Again, he's handicapped by playing without the boss of his deck, but even so, he's played Zane to effectively an even position. The logic here is similar to his duel versus Jaden, that Rainbow Dragon would tilt the duel in his favor, and even without it, he could still pull it off against another top-tier duelist. And all this talk about how much Rainbow Dragon helps brings us to his draw, the tag team with Jaden against Yubel as Marcel. A lot of people mistakenly claim that Yubel never lost a duel. Not sure why. I mean, it's pretty clear Yubel loses here when Jesse takes the both of them out with Prism Wall in order to return Duel Academy back to its dimension. And the reason this is notable is because Yubel otherwise wins every duel they participate in, except the one draw and one DNF versus Jaden. So for Jesse to be the one responsible for the one blemish on Yubel's duel record is noteworthy. Jesse doesn't duel again as himself until the sub-only Season 4, the first of which comes against Jaden when Jaden thinks he's dueling Truman. And this duel is perhaps the strongest case for Jesse because while it isn't finished, the duel concludes with Jaden down to one mystery card in hand, while Jesse controls Rainbow Dragon and his turn about to start, a near slam dunk position to be in. So Jesse has effectively defeated full power Jaden, a dude who at this point is so far ahead of every other human duelist in GX, and he did it with relative ease. Jesse's final duel is the triangle duel against Jaden and Fujiwara, where the former two are effectively working together to take down the latter. In this duel, Jesse again manages to summon Rainbow Dragon, which clears Fujiwara's field, including his boss Clear Vice Dragon and the field spell Clear World. Jesse also saves Jaden on two separate occasions. The second time he does, he actually takes himself out through the card, the one to be protected, which saves Jaden at the cost of Jesse taking damage, but allowing him to send Rainbow Dragon from his deck to grave to give Jaden the final piece for his own winning combo. It's basically the writer saying, yeah, we want Jaden to win, but we also want to be clear that Fujiwara's got nothing on Jesse. So that's the rundown of Jesse's duel record. 3 wins, 2 DNFs where he was undoubtedly in a winning position and won and arguably in both, a draw to save the world against the consensus top 3 duelist of the series in Yubel, a loss he took on purpose to help Jaden pull together the winning move, and a loss where his deck wasn't at full power and he intentionally passed up the winning move. What is the main takeaway from all this? That Jesse is the only one in the series to not lose a duel because his opponent outplayed him. The only way anyone ever beats him is if he throws the duel himself. While GX brought focus to archetypes and more coherent strategies as compared to duel monsters, most characters still seem to run pretty inefficient decks when compared to real life. For Jesse, this means running a deck that only appears to main deck 8 monsters. Granted, Crystal Beast sports some of the best spell trap support of any archetype ever, particularly with respect to search power, and this is largely true for the anime version of the deck as well. But more importantly, we ought to consider the power level of the deck in-universe. Crystal Beast are a one-of-a-kind deck designed by Pegasus and gifted to Jesse because the Crystal Beast chose him. This is a deck that is clearly respected by several others as formidable, including Chazz, Aster, Zane, Adrian, and others. And we know from precedents that rare cards and decks automatically set you up for a high ceiling, a big reason why duelists like Kaiba, Pegasus, and anyone who wields an Egyptian god card is so formidable. For Jesse, it goes without saying that when you're a respectable duelist and you have a top flight deck, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. Now let's go through the actual cards. Again, only 7 main deck monsters excluding Rainbow Dragon, but what's made very clear in Jesse's few duels is that he has no problem swarming the field. This is especially owed to the fact that Ruby Carbuncle in the anime can special summon itself from the spell zone at will, which then triggers its other effect to summon the rest of the crystallized beast. This big change from the real live version grants Jesse a constant stream of monsters because unless his opponent can get rid of Carbuncle from the spell zone, it and the rest of the crystals will just keep coming back. Moving into the spells and traps, Jesse's deck includes the strongest field spell by far in Ancient City Rainbow Ruins, which lets him have battle damage, negate spells and traps, draw extra cards, and special summon the crystals in his back row. He's got a number of cards to get crystals in his spell trap zone, like Crystal Tree, Crystal Release, and Golden Rule, several cards to leverage those crystallized monsters in various ways, like Rare Value's Draw Power, Crystal Beacon special summon from deck, E-Force to special summon the crystals, and Crystal Pair to zero out battle damage and get more crystals. Jesse does run a few cards that require having a specific monster, like Amber Crystal Circle and Sapphire Revive, but this is pretty standard in the GX era, with even the likes of Jaden running cards that pair with specific hero monsters. So Jesse's got a pretty strong deck, all things considered. But then you add on top of that when he finally does get his boss, Rainbow Dragon. Jesse duels 3 more times after that. Note that Rainbow Dragon is an incredibly tough card to bring out because it requires having the other 7 Crystal Beasts on field and or in grave, and again, Jesse only has 1 copy of each. The fact that he can bring out Rainbow Dragon in just 2 turns against Yubel, 1.5 turns against Jaden, and 3.5 turns against Fujiwara is a clear demonstration of just how well he has built his deck. This thing is as fine-tuned a machine as it gets, showing how well Jesse has optimized his strategy. I have a lot of different criteria for how I judge a character's dueling prowess. There are obvious things like duel record, strength of victory, and deck building, more nuanced things like how the duels unfolded as previously discussed, and then there are things that we are simply told. For example, we are told that D has been the Pro League champ for 10 years. Granted, he's possessed by the Light of Destruction, but to that end, it should be clear to us that the Light of Destruction can empower a competent duelist to the top of the world for a decade, even if we aren't shown much in the way of their dueling history. With Jesse, several characters know of him as the wielder of the Crystal Beast, but there are three definitively complimentary things said about Jesse beyond that. First is the famous line by Pegasus, where he tells Aster that his top 5 ranking in order are Yugi, Kaiba, Joey, Aster, and Jesse. This line was probably said before Pegasus met Jaden, and maybe even any other Duel Academy student, but it still establishes a floor for Jesse. In all honesty, this line probably does most of the work as to why people regularly consider Jesse a top 10 duelist of GX. Clearly, it means something that the creator of the game considers Jesse not only a top 5 duelist, but the only one worthy of the one-of-a-kind Crystal Beast cards. The second thing is from Aster, who demonstrates just how much respect he has for Jesse by ducking out in the middle of his Pro League tour to come see Jesse duel. As he watches, he says, "Jaden is a natural duelist, and Jesse is also an extraordinary duelist," and even going so far as to say that the bond Jesse has with the Crystal Beast is even stronger than the bond Jaden has with his monsters. The third thing we're told is through Zane, who views Jesse as similar to Jaden, saying in their duel, "If you have infinite potential like Jaden, then bring it on." Zane remarked similarly back in the graduation duel against Jaden, when he told Jaden that while his own perfection means he has reached his limits, Jaden has the infinite potential to grow. Zane is a highly respected and ranked duelist in his own right, so for him to say that about only 2 characters, Jaden and Jesse, establishes them as the 2 with the highest ceiling. Now I'll be frank, I don't weigh things we are told as much as things we are shown. The way a character duels or builds their deck holds more meaning to me than just being told someone is good, but it's one of those things that does need to at least be considered, especially when Jesse is easily the most praised duelist in this show. The fact that these compliments come from the creator of the game, plus 2 of the other characters in the running for second best human duelist, speaks volumes on Jesse's standing in universe. Another criteria that I use to judge duelists, and one that I don't think is discussed enough, is taking the character in context of the story. A very obvious example of this point is that the main character and rival will almost always be considered top 5 duelists in their respective shows, because that's just how it works. Spoiler alert, I'm actually going to subvert this specific claim for a future video on a duelist that I think is overrated, but for now, the point is that the way the writers use a character should inform us of how highly the writers think of that character, and that matters for how we rank the duelist. And this type of analysis especially comes in handy when a character is introduced late and or doesn't have enough duels to go off of. When Jesse's character is introduced, it's immediately made clear that this dude is Jaden in another font. From his "I just want to duel anytime, any place" attitude to his strong relationship with monster spirits, Jesse has a lot in common with our leading man, to the extent that Aster refers to him as another duel fool. So why does this matter? Because to me, the writers are telling us very directly that Jesse and Jaden are 2 sides of the same coin, and so if the general consensus is that Jaden is the top dog, then Jesse should be closely behind. And it's not just a character framework, the writers double down on this multiple times. First is in that very episode where Professor Viper says he's most interested in Jaden and Jesse, which is why he selects them for the exhibition match for the purpose of the bio bands, because he knows they have more duel energy than the rest. This is a nod to the 2 of them against any other student present in the room, and that nod is coming from a dude respected enough by Shepard to put the growth of the academy in his hands. And the way the duel ends is a clear indicator to me that the writers want us to believe that if Jesse had Rainbow Dragon in this moment, he would indeed have defeated Jaden. Second is the aforementioned instance where Zane considers the 2 of them as duelists with infinite potential. This not only tells us how people in-universe feel about Jesse, but how the writers want us to feel about him with respect to other duelists, namely Jaden. And third is in Season 4, where Jesse and Jaden are the last remaining humans in the world alongside Darkness-controlled Fujiwara. And in that 3-way duel, the writers spend a sizable portion of it building on how Jesse and Jaden view each other not just as friends, but as rivals who give each other something to chase. The fact that Jesse is the only other one around also suggests that he successfully fended off whatever Truman came his way, an opponent that otherwise took down the Chazz, Axel, and everyone else in the world. Similar to the previous point, we don't want to overweight the writer argument, but it shouldn't be completely ignored either. There's a reason it's Jesse and not one of the other transfer students or Chazz that Viper wants to see duel Jaden. There's a reason it's Jesse and not Aster or Zane or Chazz or someone else who was the last man standing alongside Jaden throughout the assault by darkness. There's a reason Jesse is noted as the only other duelist with infinite potential like Jaden, and there's a reason why Jesse is constantly held up as a mirror to Jaden. In my opinion, that reason is the writers demonstrating that these two are neck and neck. So that's my case for why Jesse, despite regularly being ranked in the top 10 of GX duelists in the fandom, is actually even better than he's given credit for. GX is a tricky one to assess duelists because so much of it is the Jaden show, and the other prominent duels only get to show off for 1 or 2 seasons at best. But to me, Jesse has the least amount of blemishes on his record, and is clearly positioned by the writers as the 1B to Jaden being the 1A. Let me know your thoughts and subscribe to this channel for more deep dives on duelists and other Yu-Gi-Oh content. Word on the street is this channel has infinite potential.